Inclusion Committee. Thank you all for joining us. Rebecca is recording for the sake of minutes, so we wanted to not create an environment that is too intimidating. So we hope that you enjoy our library setting here. So please stand and project if you are speaking, because it's going to have to catch the recording up here. So make sure you're speaking loudly so that we can capture that. Want to lay out a couple ground rules as we move forward, as well as give you some parameters as to what the process will look like. First off, I would be remiss in saying that our colleagues, Legislator Payton and Legislator Marshall, were not able to join us this evening. Legislator Anderson is joining us to maintain a quorum for our DEI committee. So thank you for standing in. In terms of the process, we will have a public hearing from 6 until 7:30, or until there are no more testimonies to be had. We cannot start the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee until 7:30 because that is when we publicly noticed it. So if we must take a break, we will recess and then restart at 7:30 to take up the action for us to consider. In terms of the process and procedures of the legislative efforts, we will vote to move it to the legislature as a whole, of which will take place Monday. The time has changed. 3 o'clock on Monday.
3 p.m.
Thank you. Monday at 3 p.m. Is when the legislature as a whole will take up the matter and vote up or down what happens with the legislation. So that's the procedures. In terms of important details for this evening, bathrooms are out to the right if anyone needs to use those facilities. And I ask that we do our best to maintain decorum, whether you are supportive, against, or neutral to this legislation. Please keep in mind that there will be no hate that is tolerated at all. I will ask the sheriff's deputies to escort you out because this is a committee meeting that is not going to tolerate that. So with all that said, I think we should get started. Process for speaking. If you've not already pre-registered, if you've not filled out the form to speak here this evening and not pre-registered, please do that because that is the only way that you will have access to speak. If you are not from Jackson County, the preference will be Jackson County residents first. We will try to read to the best of our ability proponents and opponents to not maintain any level of indiscretion in accordance with one side or the other to what we know. And so please be respectful as that process works its way through. Rebecca is my legislative aide. I'd like to thank her and her husband Tristan for helping out today. We've got Legislator Donna Payton's staff. Calvin is in the back. We have Chairman McGee's legislative assistant, as well as Legislator Husky's assistant at the front tables. So you are well represented in terms of the legislative body here, although you may not have the specific member here. Legislator Payton has left cards. Calvin, are they in the front? Or you have them? If anyone wants to send comments directly to Legislator Payton, Calvin has cards to give you her direct information, so please collect that if you would like to submit substantial testimony outside of this process. Gentlemen, have I forgotten anything?
Is there a time limit?
Yes, thank you. There'll be a 2-minute time limit for speakers, just to keep us moving in this process. Thank you for that reminder. I will set an alarm and it will expire at that point, and we will thank you for your testimony. Please do not try and go over. I don't want to go through that process.
What's the time limit again?
2 minutes. So, if you have additional things to say after 2 minutes, feel free to submit those comments in writing. You can submit it to any one of the legislators. You can submit them to Rebecca, and we will share them with the legislature as a whole as well. And you can do that in writing. If you want to send a video, we can, I'm sure, share that too. So, without any further ado, I think we get this process started. And the first person that we have so far is Austin Strassel.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Austin Strassel. I am a resident here in Jackson County in Kansas City, Missouri, and I am here to testify in favor of the piece of legislation that is proposed to ban conversion therapy here in Jackson County. Just a little bit of background about why I'm here to support this piece of legislation. Back in 2019, I was part of an initial group of 4 individuals that began speaking and having conversations with members of the Kansas City City Council to talk about and propose and introduce a legislation to ban conversion therapy within Kansas City. that legislation after a very deliberative process, after many conversations with City Council. We introduced that legislation, and unanimously that legislation was adopted back in 2019. And we'd always hoped that back then that action, that step forward, would lead to more action across the region from other local governments, from other local leaders. And thankfully, we have seen that action, right? There have been other municipalities across the region who have voted to adopt conversion therapy ordinances and protect youth who could potentially be victims of a practice that we know has been debunked time and time again by every single medical association in the United States, by pediatricians, by therapists, by psychologists. And so I'm very happy to see that this legislation has been introduced. I want to thank the sponsors of the legislation, and I would just encourage the legislators to vote in favor of this ordinance to protect youth from a practice that is incredibly harmful, that has been debunked, and continue the steps that have been taken over the last 4 years to introduce and adopt legislation to protect a vulnerable population within our community and make sure that this is not something that any youth has to endure now or moving forward. So I would just say, please vote in favor, and thank you.
Well timed. Thank you for setting an example. All right. And just as a point of reference, you should have a copy of the current legislation on your table if you'd like to refer to that. That's what we'll be discussing in this afternoon's, in this evening, I guess, DEI committee. So, wanted to now invite Mr. Dale Smith forward to testify.
I'm going to read a one-page letter, and before I do, I'm a pastor in Blue Springs. I live in Blue Springs, and I just want to say I am really excited and grateful to be here, and I see that this whole occasion is marked by civility, and that excites me and gratifies me. But let me read the letter, and then I'll leave you legislators with a copy. The Missouri Baptist Christian Life Committee is the public policy and religious liberty arm of the Missouri Baptist Convention. The MBC comprises about 1,500 Southern Baptist churches in Missouri with about 500,000 members, including those who live and work in Jackson County communities. The members of our commission submit this letter on behalf of Missouri Baptists in strong opposition to the proposed ordinance number 5711. An ordinance enacting section 5575 Jackson County Code 1984 relating to a ban on so-called conversion therapy for minors, which includes a criminal penalty provision. First, this legislation will violate providers and counselees' rights and sincerely held religious beliefs protected by free speech, free exercise, and equal protection clauses in our Bill of Rights. Such an infringement, with a threat of punishment for communicating about certain ideas, is both unconstitutional and immoral. Central to the Christian faith is the proclamation of the gospel of Jesus Christ and the power of God to produce life change in all who trust and obey Christ. Christians doctrinally call it conversion. Second, this legislation will infringe on parental rights by effectively limiting legal guardians' medical and counseling options for their minor children. Third, this legislation advocates and enshrines into law a narrow view of human sexuality, which is antithetical to diversity of viewpoint. Rather than wait for evidence, activists push their political and personal ideology into law, forcing their views on everyone who disagree. Such intolerance is inconsistent with diversity. Fourth, this legislation marginalizes those for whom conversion therapy has been a benefit, and it ignores the reality of their lived experiences. Fifth, this legislation and its wording would put school counselors and staff in jeopardy of punishment for encouraging a student's desire to seek, along with his parents, to align his sexual feelings of conduct with his moral or spiritual convictions.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Okay, I'm going to leave the letter with all of you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we will invite Rabbi Doug Alpert.
Evening. I'm here to speak in support of the ordinance and against conversion therapy. So it seems to be about two things. Seems to be about religion, seems to be about science. And I think they actually can work together in concert with each other. And as to the religion piece, come up with two things. One, in Genesis it says we're all created, B'Tselem Elohim in the Hebrew, in the image of God. The creation of people comes out as when it comes to being queer or LGBTQ+, it comes as a state of being, not a choice, not something that be shifted. I knew my gay son was gay before he did. When he was in the 3rd grade, I knew. There wasn't anything that was going to change that. In Leviticus, in chapter 19, it says, love your neighbor as yourself. That's to love other people for who they are, not who you think they should be. My religion also tells me that the God I pray to is a God of compassion, it's a God of kindness, and it's a God of science. It's a God that honors the fact that God gave us a brain and we're not required to check our brains at the door. So when I read the ordinance, I was thrilled that you all cited to all the organizations in the psychiatric and psychological community that says how dangerous conversion therapy is. Kids commit suicide, kids get messed up by conversion therapy. So it's not benign, it's not simply a moral choice. It's a psychological consideration. And finally, I'm going to say this. I am here tonight for my friends in the queer community, for my congregants in the queer community, and I have many congregants who are LGBTQ+, and I'm here for my gay son. If somebody had tried conversion therapy on my kid when he was young, he's in his 30s now, he's thriving, he's proud and comfortable with who he is, I can't imagine how much anger I would exude if somebody tried to mess with my kid in that way. So I'm grateful for this. I'm kind of shocked and surprised that in 2023 we even need this, but apparently we do. So thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Reverend Leroy Glover.
Good evening, everybody.
Hello.
I don't have a big, powerful, long message as some of the others do. I do sympathize with the last speaker about his son, that he would be highly angered if somebody tried to convert him. But what about on the other side? The dad has a straight son, goes to a school, goes to some other institution, and them trying to convert him the other way. I would be just as angry. Whatever we do, we need to make sure it's fair both ways. We all have to live together. I personally am straight. I have a lot of gay friends, and I don't mean that to sound cliche, but I have a lot of gay friends, and I love them. Amen, Pastor Donna? I love Pastor Donna. That's my sister over there. I have no problem with gay people, but I do have a problem with gay people that exude hate themselves. The signs, if you don't love your lesbian, you're gay, you're bi, you're trans, it's not about not loving you. It's easy to love you. It's easy. Now, I don't know that I completely agree with conversion therapy, but I disagree with how far it goes. It goes to say that who's right are those that are on the gay side that are against conversion therapy, that they have the ability, as it says here, to try to convert our kids, for instance. If our kids are having certain feelings, certain thoughts and everything, that they have the authority to try to do some conversion. Not right. It's not fair. The parents should have authority over their own kids. Parents should have the authority to love their kids and try to guide their kids. We don't need anybody's help outside of the parents. I look at the other side here. If you don't love your gay, your lesbian, gay, queer children, and you're created in God's image, and your God is gay, how hateful does that sound? Your God is gay?
Let's focus on the
Listen,
legislation and not the people.
I'm just saying, the attitude of the legislation that comes from people. I hear more hatred exuded on the gay side. We've accepted gay people. We love you. And I don't know why a lot of gays think that people of religion, ministers or what have you, hate you. No, we don't. You're not our enemy, but you've made us your enemy. We love you. Understand that. That's all I've got to say.
We welcome up Reverend David McDaniel.
Good evening. My name is Reverend David McDaniel. I'm the senior pastor of Holmeswood Baptist Church
and I fully and wholeheartedly support the proposed ban of conversion therapy on minors in Jackson County, Missouri. It is evident in the legislation that you've already proposed from the medical sciences, all the statistics and research that goes into this. I'm not a scientist. I'm a pastor. I'm a theologian. So as a pastor, I view life through the lens of theology and morality. When discerning the moral from the immoral, my faith leads me to ask various questions, such as, what does it do to the least of these? Does it contribute to the common good and beloved community, or does it hinder it? Does it tell the truth, and is it based in reality? I believe that conversion therapy fails each of these basic moral questions. My friends and colleagues from the faith community who oppose this ban do so on the basis of theology. But this legislature is not charged to conduct the work of theology. Rather, this legislator is charged to lead and protect the people of Jackson County, especially her citizens who are vulnerable. And so the statistics are extremely clear. When minors are exposed to conversion therapy, they are at a higher risk for attempted suicide and are more likely to report high levels of depression. My friends, this is a health issue. So as a pastor, as a Baptist pastor, as a faith leader, a husband, father, and brother of this community, I stand in solidarity of support with the ban of conversion therapy for minors in Jackson County. And I urge you to pass this ban. For when you do this, you are leading Jackson County into a more justice, righteous, and inclusive future. Thank you.
Is there anyone who's pre-registered who is here to speak in opposition? Then we'll continue. Michael DeVoe. I'll ask again a little later. John Coach Comstock.
I'm going to come from a totally different angle. We've had several people here from the religious community, and I could probably wear several hats, as several people in this room know I could. But I'm going to come from my angle of being a public school teacher for over 40 years, as well as a coach. That's why he called me coach. That's a nickname I've had forever. But I'm also going to come to you as a teacher of advanced placement psychology for many years. And I will tell you, the biggest thing I always had to teach was during developmental processes of adolescence, there is so much going on, both physically and mentally. And that is a huge issue for these kids. They do not need to have something that is forced on them. I taught my students, if you need any type of therapy, make sure you understand who the therapist is and that you are comfortable with them. If you do not, you will have no success whatsoever. To be forced to do any type of therapy, including conversion therapy, which everybody's already said, APA, AMA, I can go down the list of people who have not approved it, never approved it, is forcing the kids to do something. And we need to protect their rights as a young adult. And if they want to make a decision later on in life, that as an adult, that's going to be their decision. But we cannot sit there and force them to basically do that. And that is coming from an education standpoint that I have dealt with kids who have gone through depression. I have dealt with kids who have tried to commit suicide. I have dealt with kids who have come up to me and have openly told me that they are gay or that they are trans. And they really feel the pressure. And if we're going to throw the extra pressure of saying, well, you have to go through this therapy to get better, you're telling the kid they're wrong. And they're not wrong. They are wonderful kids.
Agreed.
And that's what you always have to remember. This has nothing to do with loving or hating any group whatsoever. This has to do with kids and the fact that we should love them and let them develop normally.
Agreed.
Coach, you had 20 seconds left.
I'm done.
He may think of something later.
Yeah.
I'll think about it. Okay.
Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to legislation that's been registered or registered today? All right, we'll continue. Reverend Donna Simon.
Hi, Hi, thank you so much for having this hearing and thank you for this legislation. My name is Donna Simon. I serve as the pastor of St. Mark Urban Peace Lutheran Church, which is about a half mile from here at Troost in Manheim. I have been serving that church since 2000, and the congregation, it's a merger congregation, has been a welcoming church since the 90s, which means that I have seen firsthand what happens to people who have been told when they're young that there's something wrong with them and that they are a disease to be cured. I have held people while they cried about why their families can't accept who they are. I have sat in my office and listened to people who still think they're broken because someone told them many years ago that they needed to be converted back to something that they never were. So thank you for this legislation. Thank you for speaking for our people. I love you, Leroy.
Amen.
I want you to be
Amen.
exactly who you are. I don't want to make you anything else.
Same here,
And
sister.
thank
Same
you,
here.
Manny, for standing up for everyone's right to be who they are
Mm-hmm.
and not to have to deal with junk science.
That's right.
Thank you.
I just want to remind you all, we will start at 7:30 no matter what. So there's another minute that was shaved off, Reverend. But thank
I didn't
you.
want to repeat everybody else's.
Fair enough. Is there anyone to speak in opposition to the legislation that's pre-registered or is registered tonight? All right, we'll continue. Zoe. Oh, thank you.
Hello, my name is Zoe Dunning, and I'm testifying in support of this ordinance. I'm queer and transgender, and I was in conversion therapy for 5 years. And for the majority of that time, I was a minor who had no say in the counseling I went through. I finally stopped going when I was 19, almost 20, because I could not bear the internal turmoil of suppressing myself and my family's belief in religion anymore. I chose to be true to myself, and in so doing, I was kicked out of my parents' house and ostracized from most of my family to this day. There are no words that can describe the pain and trauma that I've experienced just for having a sexuality deemed a perversion and a mental illness, and for the amount of abuse I've endured in attempts to change my sexuality. I still struggle with depression, anxiety, and PTSD for going through this discredited practice. I spent my teenage years wanting to kill myself because of the therapy I went through that was supposed to help. I mourn the childhood I could have had if I would have been accepted and affirmed. Please do the right thing and pass this ordinance banning conversion therapy in the whole county so no kid has to suffer like this ever again. Thank you.
I'll ask our staff members if there are any additional sign-ins to go ahead and bring them up. So anyone here to speak in opposition of the legislation that has pre-registered or registered today? We'll continue. Annette Griffith. All right. Monica De Longpre. Did I say this correctly?
I just found out about this event a couple hours ago, so I just looked this up. Good evening, my name is Monica Alexis De Longpre, and I am a sitting board member of Kansas City Center for Inclusion. I am a trans woman, and I am here in support of the ordinance. I graduated last semester from UMKC with 2 bachelor's degrees, one in biotechnology and the other in chemistry. I currently help develop cancer drugs and plan on getting my PhD in molecular engineering. Conversion therapy would have destroyed my life. This ritual, under the control of fanatics, is the ultimate definition of grooming. Institutional grooming is to deny the truth and freedom for a young mind and to ensure a generation continues control. This ordinance is not about religious freedom. We constitutionally know that it does not include the right to imprison others. We also know that Christianity and LGBTQ+ identity can coincide in a person. I am such an individual. I am lucky to not have been in conversion therapy. However, I have known several people who have been permanently scarred by the attempted indoctrination. Children's futures are in danger. They will not have the opportunity to flourish as themselves and will lose out on being a functioning member of society. I am one of the brightest examples of how much we can give back to the world. And the existence of conversion therapy is the attempt to eradicate people such as myself. To wrap things up, allowing extremist dogma to heinously hurt children must not be allowed in Jackson County. Please pass this ordinance.
Is there anyone who's pre-registered or is registered this afternoon to speak in opposition of the legislation? All right, we will welcome Scott Casey.
All right. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I am a resident of Jackson County, specifically from Blue Springs. Kind of jumping off of what Mr. Strassel said earlier, his group really led the way by pushing for a conversion therapy ban in Kansas City. And it did spark a number of other cities to do the same kind of change, including my community in Blue Springs. A group of us saw what the success that they had, and we said, we can do that too in Blue Springs. A group of high school students, college students, young people, survivors, we came to our city council and we asked them to ban conversion therapy for minors in Blue Springs as well. And they said no. So the reason I wanted to come today is to say that this county-wide ban is necessary, because if you fail to pass it, there will be a safe haven for conversion therapy in Jackson County. It'll be Eastern Jackson County, it'll be Grain Valley, Blue Springs, Lee Summit. Those places are not right now willing to pass a ban on their own. So the cities are, some of the cities have moved forward, some are not ready to do that. The county needs to step up and protect these kids. We've seen, everybody's talked about the various organizations that have talked about how dangerous this is for kids. If you believe that data, if you believe that research, we need to pass this, or kids are gonna get hurt in our community. So that's all I had to say, thank you.
Is there anyone who's pre-registered or registered this evening in support or in opposition of this legislation? We'll continue. Moises Franco Gonzalez.
Hi, my name is Moises Franco Gonzalez. I am a senior at East High School, and I challenge everyone with this question today. Where is your love and humanity? I am a gay Christian, and I've seen both sides of this argument. What is being proposed today is inhumane. Conversion therapy isn't actually therapy, but it's emotional and sometimes physical abuse. Let's call it what it is. I was never taught how to be gay, but I was taught how to hate. For years, I felt unsafe and unloved by my father because he had his own way of educating me on this topic. It took a lot of help, healing, and self-love to figure out who I am today. And I a lot of will to surpass my trauma. My obligation to myself and to the rest of my generation is to express myself each day, because as a kid, I never had the luxury. Please ban conversion therapy. Don't make kids feel unsafe and unloved. Don't break that for them. For my Christians here today, the foundation of our faith is based on love. What is being proposed here is rooted in fear and hatred, not love. I end with this. I challenge everyone here today. Where is your love and humanity? Thank you.
Is there anyone who has pre-registered to speak in opposition or register this evening? All right. Stormy. You got it.
I'm Stormy Wayman. I am a senior and I am a lesbian. I knew that I was gay when I was 3. I remember I was watching this cartoon and it just clicked. I hear a lot of people talk about how it's taught, it's groomed. You're shown these things. I grew up, my parents, mom, dad, I was taught a very specific way, very religious, although my parents are very accepting. I feel like the way it's put is very hypocritical. We talk about how gay people and trans people are the ones that are grooming our children. They're the ones that are attacking these children. Yet, we're trying to send them to conversion therapy. Physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse. You have no idea what goes on, and the parents that are in this room, you don't want your kids, you want your kids to be going through this, but if you knew the extent, maybe you wouldn't. If you're and say that gay people and trans people are the ones that are hurting their kids and you're in support of this, that is not, this is 2023. We have way more issues. Gay people and trans people are not the reason why our kids are being harmed. It's not. We can fix our education, housing. We have so much more to focus on than a child's sexuality and their children, which means they're under 18. They should be in school, in sports, getting their academics, but you're more focused on their sexuality. Talking about they're too young to know their sexuality, they're too young to know what they are, yet you're trying to create legislation to force them to go to conversion therapy to try to change who they should know that they are, but you know who they are. It doesn't make any sense. It's not good for the children. It's not going to get the community anywhere. It's 2023. This is Kansas City. We should be way ahead of this. Basing it just in religion and basing it on beliefs instead of anything else. Medical associations are saying it's ineffective. It doesn't do anything for kids. All it does is harm kids. And if you can sit up here as a parent and say that you are willing to send your children to conversion therapy, please get over yourself.
Is there anyone here who is pre-registered to speak in opposition or is registered this evening to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I will continue by reading the statements we had sent for the record. And I'll time myself. The Jackson County Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee from Reverend Shanna Stites, Senior Minister of the Community Christian Church. Thank you for the opportunity to share my support for this important legislation that is a step in making our community a safer place for all of our residents to live, work, and thrive. As an ordained minister with a graduate degree in theological studies and over 20 years of ministry experience, it is important for me to stand with our LGBTQIA+ siblings against conversion therapy in our community. As an open and affirming congregation of the Christian Church, Disciples of Christ, the Community Christian Church professes weekly our calling to be a congregation practicing God's radical, inclusive, real love together. In community, we welcome and celebrate people of all ages, abilities, and identities to be known as God's beloved. This welcome statement, affirmed by our entire congregation, is a celebration grounded in some of the first verses of Scripture that are clear in stating that each of us is created in the image of God and created not just good, but very good, Genesis 1. Every single one of us. Our congregation celebrates the rich diversity of our shared humanity, and we affirm the brave courage of our queer siblings to live into the fullness of their truest selves. Living in community with the full spectrum of humanity helps us know God in a more complete way that often takes us outside our narrow comfort zones into the fullness of God's presence in the world. Our congregation is comprised of residents not just from Jackson County, but also from Clay, Platte, Wyandotte, Johnson, and Leavenworth counties. We have members and friends from across the Midwest who worship with us weekly to know more fully the inclusive and hope-filled message of God's unconditional love. Together, we are cisgendered and transgendered, lesbian, gay, and bisexual, and much more on the spectrum of God's grace. Oh, there's another page. We are a congregation committed to the intergenerational work with members that span from a few months to over 90 years old. I say this only to emphasize that we represent a wide spectrum of Christians. And I must end there. So, as a reminder, this will be shared, if it's not already, sent out to all the colleagues of the legislature and will be preserved in the minutes of today's meeting for further review. Are there any individuals here to speak in opposition, either pre-registered or registered this evening? Seeing none.
I've got one last point I would like
Reverend,
to
we'll get back to you after everyone's been heard.
Okay.
All right. So this is from Reverend Valerie Austin, ordained Christian Church, Disciples of Christ, clergy serving in Smithville, Missouri. That one actually is not from Jackson County, so we'll hold that one. Looks like...
This is the first chance I've gotten to read Manny's emails over his shoulders.
You've noticed 222 unread? Let's see. Okay. I don't think we need to read that for a record. All right. With that, let me make sure this one isn't, I think it's the, yep, we already got that. Rebecca, did I miss any that were previously submitted?
The one that is not from Jackson County, what was the name on that one?
That would be Reverend Valerie Austin.
What about Tyler Heston?
All right. This is why Rebecca's great, if everyone didn't know that already.
Great job, Rebecca.
Sure. Well, colleagues, do you have any comments at this current time? I mean, that's also a possibility, I guess.
I'm just watching you tap dance.
Thanks. Thanks, Sean. I appreciate that. Here we go. All right. I'm a friend and colleague of Shauna, and she passed along information about tonight's meeting. Okay, I probably don't need to read that part. Thank you to the DEI committee and all who have supported Ordinance 5711 to ban conversion therapy in Jackson County. My identity includes my belonging both to the Christian faith and to the LGBTQ plus community. I'm a gay man, a pastor, and a Kansas City Christian who believes that we create a better world for all people in the spectrums of body and spirit. By banning conversion therapy for minors, this ordinance offers one more step to guaranteeing a world in which people can grow up to be their most full self. Regardless of what one believes, there is ample evidence that conversion therapy does harm and does not heal participants. No religious belief should be the reason that anyone, especially a minor, is forced to undergo the trauma of conversion therapy. Some things cannot be changed, and by banning this damaging practice, all are invited into more whole ways of practicing their religion and being human in our country. As a Christian pastor in particular, though I am eager for legislation like this ordination to continue banning programs like conversion therapy. I read that sentence a little awkwardly. The practices and the purpose of these damaging programs do not represent what Christianity really is or can be. The religion is rooted in stories of someone who taught and healed about a world in which all belong as they are and can flourish in the full humanity. The damage done to LGBTQ plus youth by forcing them into being someone they are not is antithetical to the message that stated the movement we know now as Christianity. As an LGBTQ plus pastor in particularly, I am eager for a world in which all are truly free to be who they are and believe in what they believe in or don't believe in. By banning conversion therapy, this ordinance does not restrict anyone's religious practice, but creates a more open opportunity for people to embody their genuine religious experiences without the harm that is done by the pseudo-psychological masquerading as theology at work in conversion therapy. It continues, but I will stop there. And that was from Reverend Tyler Heston, minister to youth and young adults. That's an important note. From the Country Club Christian Church. All right. Is there anyone here that has pre-registered or registered this evening to speak in opposition? Seeing none, Mr. Tyler McCall.
I wasn't planning on speaking tonight. I am from Platte County, and I wasn't sure if there would be time or the need for those voices. But I decided it'd be important to go ahead and speak. I'm speaking in support tonight. First off, I just wanted to say thank you for everyone that spoke tonight. You guys are incredibly courageous, incredibly brave, and this is what we need. As someone from Platte County, we need Jackson County to take this step in leadership. Thank you, Jalen. Thank you, Manny. Thank you, third gentleman, whose name I'm going to learn, I promise you.
I try to stay under the radar.
If Jackson County can't take this step, a place like Platte County never has a shot in taking this. And that's why I decided to stand, because that's a different point. We need this leadership because we have to get further. We need our other counties in the area. This entire region should have this practice banned. It's harmful. The science is against it. We know it hurts children. And I know there's arguments for parents' rights, but there are things that we're not allowed to do to kids when you have parents. You're not allowed to traumatize your kid. You're not allowed to abuse your kid, to starve your kid. And this is the same thing. It's starving them from love. It's abuse. It's traumatic. I never had to go through this practice myself. I was lucky to have a family once I came out to them that they were very supportive. But I have friends who didn't, who weren't that lucky. And all I can say is I'm grateful that they're here today. And it didn't harm them past the point of return. But that's not always the case. And we have to care for these people. It is harmful, it's traumatic. I'm losing my train of thought. But we need this leadership. We need this to pass because we need it. We need to protect these kids. We need to protect against this practice. And one last thing, I was raised in a Presbyterian church. I'm no longer religious. But the Presbyterian church seems to manage just fine, being very open to gay people. My pastor was gay for many, many years. He's one of the best men I know. He's a mentor. and not just, it's possible to love and to incorporate those two things. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Is there anyone to testify in opposition who's pre-registered or registered this evening? We'll continue. My name is Reverend Valerie Austin, MD, IV, ordained Christian Church, Disciples of Christ, clergy serving in Smithville, Missouri. My strong conviction is that a ban on conversion therapy would not only serve to benefit those at risk of undergoing and facilitating this process, but also the whole of the community. Conversion therapy is a form of spiritual and psychological abuse that perpetuates fragmentation in the individual and society. By undermining and damaging the mental and spiritual well-being of the individual that identifies as LGBTQ, conversion therapy is traumatizing in a way that has ongoing and lasting effects not only on the personal lives of those individuals, but also their public lives, as it negatively affects how well they can actively and beneficially participate and contribute to society. Any psychological and spiritual trauma erects a barrier to a life of good mental health and a readiness for the individuals to fully engage in positive and life-giving ways for their benefit and the benefits of their community. These practices are based on faulty theology that ignores the historical context in which various biblical passages were written and therefore has been used to abuse and justify fear of difference and diversity, as well as mislead the faithful and well-meaning, destroying and straining countless relationships and households. I would implore you to ban this cruel process and protect the health and well-being of your community and contribute to a more healed and safe place where individuals can thrive. Thank you. Reverend Valerie Austin from Smithville. All right. To our staff in the room, any other testimonies at this point? I can't see Rebecca.
You could go back over the names.
Oh,
that were-
thank you. Thank you, Coach. Yes. One last time. Michael DeVoe. All right. Mr. DeVoe, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I grew up in the Adirondack Mountains of rural New York State. There's much I love about home, but one thing that was very clear when I was at home was that being gay was bad, evil, and immoral. And at the age of 20, I found a religious tradition that supported that. And not only did it say that God hated it, but that he would heal it. So I joined conversion therapy group in an effort to be changed from gay to straight. I was part of that effort for 2 years. I did what I was told, and part of that was identified as straight. I joined a men's group, I did masculine things. I dated and married as a sign of my healing. I played all sorts of mental and psychological gymnastics to pretend that I was straight until it was going to happen. Fake it till you make it. After marrying and fathering 4 wonderful children, I came to a realization. I'm still gay. At 51, I finally accepted that God was not going to change me, no matter what kind of effort I put forth. However, to this day, I still live with the abusive effects of conversion therapy. Feelings of failure, self-condemnation, and on particularly difficult days, suicidal ideation. I'm an adult, and I joined conversion therapy as an adult. This is a choice that I regret. I live every day with the negative impact of those choices. And right now, parents are forcing their children to submit to the same harmful and abusive therapy that I went through. They need to be protected from the lifelong consequences that will be generated in their lives. These children have no voice. These children have no choice in declaring their own identity. For the sake of these children, I urge you to do the right thing and ban conversion therapy for minors. Thank you.
Is there anyone who has pre-registered or joined us this evening to speak in opposition to this legislation? Seeing none, Ms. Annette Griffith, last time. All right. Gentlemen, I think if you're okay with this, we'll adjourn. Further conversation can be
I've
had.
got one more point I need to make, if you don't mind, sir.
Well, yeah, but that would then allow me to have everyone in the room do the same. So
I
I
need
think,
to make a point. I really do.
and I think I'm asking my colleagues here, do we want to go another round with everyone, or do we want to adjourn and allow those conversations to happen amongst us individually?
That's kind of what I was gonna ask you, is if we have to continue formally, and if it's important for you to be heard formally, or if you're.
It
okay
really
with-
is, yes.
I have no objection to that either.
Okay.
Let's keep on going.
Individuals who'd like to speak again, sir, go ahead.
And it's still pretty brief. Now, listen, I don't have a problem with banning conversion therapy, if that's fine. Young lady, I appreciate the words you said. Coach, you made the best point in my opinion. But I do have a problem with this. Do we want harmony or not? Because what you're talking about right now, there won't be any harmony. We need to have harmony. With harmony comes fairness. So when you say that people on the side that don't want the ban, that still want conversion therapy, I can't say that I agree with that. We're not the authorities. We're not authoritarians to be able to say that. But guess what? Neither are you. So we can't say, which is in the subtitle on page 4, under definitions, conversion therapy or reparative therapy means any practice or treatment that seeks to change an individual's sexual orientation or gender identity, including efforts to change behaviors and gender expressions, or to eliminate, reduce sexual or romantic attractions or feelings towards individuals of the same gender, or any therapeutic intervention imposed with the intent of promoting a particular sexual orientation and or gender as a preferred outcome. But then say, in contrast to that, conversion therapy shall not include counseling that provides support and assistance to a person undergoing gender transition, like Coach said, and I agree. Kids have all kinds of thoughts when they're young. I wanted to be an astronaut when I was a kid. It changed to where I wanted to be an attorney when I was a kid. I'm neither today. I'm a pastor today, and I'm very proud of that. Again, it's about love, folks. It's about love. It's about love. I love you, brother. I love all of you in this room. I have no reason not to. Love comes easy for me. And I think it comes easy for most people. But a lot of people still think that the religious community hates gay people. That's not true. We've been taught to love everybody, regardless. We've been taught to not judge anybody either. There's only one that judges, and not us.
Thank you, Reverend.
We're not in authority to judge. But I'm saying, if we're going to do
Reverend,
this,
thank you. Reverend, thank
hang on.
you.
If we're gonna
Reverend,
do let's
this
be
is
fair.
our meeting, Reverend.
It
Please
is our
take
meeting.
your seat.
Let's be fair. We can't let one side
Deputies,
be the authority
please.
and the other side not. Let's leave our kids alone to develop naturally. Thank you.
Anyone else who would like to speak? Yes.
I would like to counter that from the position of the fact that these sides, religious or LGBTQ, is not equal. One comes from a place of power, of institutional power, and the other side has hidden, has ran, has denied themselves. So to say that there are queer people who hate Christians for some reason, despite people such as myself being a trans woman on hormones started last year, to say that they're equally hated is not just incorrect, but it is very misleading and insulting. There's not much else I have to say besides the fact one comes from a dominating power. And if we take this ordinance and pass it, we would be able to protect children from this institutional, harmful, dominating power. Thank you.
Anyone would like to say anything else?
I'll go ahead.
Coach?
Again, the educator is coming out. Sorry about that. But I want you all to remember, I hear a lot of religion talk and all this kind of stuff, and I'm not saying anything bad or good, or we all love each other, blah, 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 that's fine. As an educator, there was 5 letters put together, actually 4 originally, but there was 1 added. But the LGBTQ community, the Q was added in the 90s, and it was added for the word questioning, to allow an adolescent to think through, what is it that I'm going through? What is it that I'm dealing with? Without making a commitment. Without having to say, oh yeah, I must be gay, or I must be bisexual. But they can let themselves question it. I know it's sort of morphed into queer more. The question was actually why it was added back in the 90s. That's my education part for all you youngsters. And that's important because I'm not sitting here talking about anything with religion. I am talking about childhood development, and let it happen naturally. Bottom line.
Anyone else would like to say anything before we?
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
one last thing. First of all, the thought I had was harmony at the price of harm is not acceptable. I'm gonna start there. So if you're gonna harm people, you want harmony, no, it's not acceptable. Jesus didn't say that either. Number two, I do still identify as a Christian. I go to church every Sunday, and there are a lot of churches out there that are not. They're very welcoming and have a place for them. So there is a place for harmony within the LGBTQ community and the Christian community.
Amen.
They are not necessarily mutually exclusive.
That's right.
And so we're talking about now something where we're saying, don't harm the kids. And by the way, I'm an educator too. So, and I've seen the harm in the lives of these kids. I've had to be that safe place for some of these kids who were ready to commit suicide, who were ready to say, I can't be who I am at home, but at least I can be here for a few minutes in this classroom. I can be who I am. Thank you.
Last call. Oh. Take your pick.
Everything comes with a price. There's no doubt about that. I want to go back to what he said and share part of his story. As an adult, he chose that conversion therapy for him, and he regretted that. Now, am I going to be a parent to that for a kid? Everything comes with a price. The price that the parent is making is harming your kid. And nobody can ever be united, at least not here. We live in a broken world where sin is constantly coming after us, and we can't just come to an agreement because of our different views and different backgrounds, but we can come to an agreement on what does affect the most. What Stormy said was actually really true. Conversion therapy is bad. We worry about the wrong things that are harming our kids. Gun violence is a top priority. It's not an opinion, it's a fact. I never thought I, as a kid, would have to go through those drills. Same thing with my little sister. I do not want her to grow up in a place where she feels unsafe, where she goes through the same steps I have to go through a lot of work to surpass this trauma. Thank you.
So, in my time, I have heard many people, like what he said about we loving all, we just want harmony, but there's always a but. There is no but. There's always the thing of, but if we pass this, it'll give them the power. They get the upper hand. It means that they're right. There's no right and there's no wrong. It's just what is good and what is bad. If you can sit here and say, I'm gonna love all people, whatever you are, no matter what you identify with, and then say, but if we protect kids from conversion therapy, then it is, it's giving the gay people, the trans people the upper hand. There is no upper hand. We will, it's really sad. We will never be able to have the upper power. We will never be able to be above them. So no matter what we do, no matter what we pass, we will always be oppressed. We will always be diminished. So you can say you love, you can say you accept, but you don't. You just want to say it just to be, a little accepting, but it doesn't get you far if you're going to counteract it with the but. If you're going to say, I love you, we should accept you, but it's not fair if we pass this. What about parental rights? It's not about parental rights. It's about the children's rights. It's under 18. If you're over 18, make that choice, like he said. But he also regretted it. If you're forcing a child into going into conversion therapy just to please yourself, nothing is getting out of it. If you can sit there and say you love people and then counteract that with, but, just don't. Just don't. Leave religion out of it. Leave everything else out of it. Let's get down to the basics. There's no right, there's no wrong. It's protecting the children. Protect the children no matter what you believe in. That should just be the basis of it. Stop basing it on anything else. Leave it at the children. Leave it at the children. All I have to say.
Last time.
I've just gotta say, you know, like, plenty of queer people, including myself, do hate the church, do hate Christians, and for good reason. Like, I've only ever been hurt for my sexuality in the name of God. Like, no one else has tried to change me except for the church. So.
I understand. I'm sorry to hear that. I understand.
All right. With that being said, we will adjourn our public hearing at 6:58. We will recess. That's probably an official term. We'll take a break. At 7:30, we will resume with the committee meeting. It is a public meeting. You are welcome to stay, hear the deliberation, discussion as we decide where this legislation moves, or how it moves, probably. So, thank you all for your testimony, and we'll be here. Oh, sure, before we officially adjourn.
So I just want to say thank you to everybody. The idea that we can have everybody come out and speak and be heard, and honestly, I think even the people that were disagreeing with each other were actually listening to each other. If we want to do better, I think this helps. So I just want to say thank you to everybody.
Well, I want to echo what Legislator Smith had just said, and I want to thank Chairman Abarca for putting this on. I think that a lot of things have been said about the process and everything that's been going on and things, but always public comment is a wonderful thing and a strong thing that we hear from everyone and anyone. Thank goodness for this country of ours, instead of it being like other countries where we don't have the ability to speak our minds. But I do want us to remember as we go through this process, whatever happens, is that society itself is not always perfect. It's never going to be perfect. But if we can lessen one's challenges during day by day, and hopefully not attack anyone else's challenges that they face day by day, I think that is the focus of how government has to handle this, and I think that's what this committee has done, and also what the chairman has done. So I appreciate him holding this.
They forced me to say something now. I obviously will echo all the sentiments here, and really thank survivors, thank our youth here for coming and testifying, our educators in the room, our community members abroad. This is the point of this committee, diversity, equity, inclusion. I must thank the chairman for creating this committee. This is not a formal committee that has existed prior to this year with this legislation, or this legislature. We anticipate having many hard discussions, and we look forward to civility in our discussions and conversations, as well as public testimony and public comment. So I invite you all back for the next round of whatever we take up next. And hope that you'll stay engaged in both our committee, but as the legislature as a whole. Jackson County, I think for far too long, we all agree probably in this statement, we have not been as engaged with the community as we should.
Couldn't be more true.
And we are here now to do very much that. So please stay engaged with the legislature, with the individuals, with the county executive, all of those that play a part in this process that is governing. So with that, we will officially adjourn now at 7:01.
Thank you.
Drinks. Now we're starting. 7:34. I'd like to call the DEI Committee, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, to order. My name is Manuel Abarca, legislator for the 1st District. We have standing in the DEI Committee today, Legislator Anderson from the 1st at Large, and Legislator Smith as well. Present. We do have a quorum. We have one member absent, 2 members absent, Legislator Payton, Legislator Marshall. With that, I'd seek a motion to take up from the floor legislation 5711, or ordinance 5711.
Do you want to read that into the...
Thank you. Okay. For the sake of the minutes, thank you, Legislator Anderson. An ordinance enacting section 667 and 5575 of the Jackson County Code 1984 relating to a ban on conversion therapy for minors with a penalty provision. I guess we actually tabled it from the previous meeting, so all we need to do is remove it from the table and discuss if we need to discuss, or we can act immediately. So, as chair, I would remove it from the table, and we are in discussion. anything to discussion?
I've said I think we need to work on the language a little bit, and I'm trying to do that, but I don't think we're in a position to do that tonight. And I'm looking forward to continuing to work with you on it. Hopefully, we'll get it through by Monday.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
I agree. I think though that it's quite clear that I know wording has its ways to get in legislation, but I do think that it is very important that we do not deviate from the need of the legislation itself. The need of the legislation could not be more clear, and I do hope that we can come to a consensus because it is something that is needed. It is clear that this is happening right now. It is clear it has happened to several people in our community, and I think that if we can find a way, I want consensus on this. I know you do, Mr. Chairman. I know Legislator Smith does as well. But I want us to remember at the end of the day is the very first chance that this government has ever had to pass a piece of legislation which will actually protect children since its creation back in 1971. This is the very first time that any piece of legislation of this stature has gotten this far. And I think it is crucial that we do not allow random, not random, that is the wrong word, the understanding of definitions that that one might be better than the other. If both can be in the, and that's the main thing that I want to point out, is that if definitions, both definitions which can pertain to a larger ranging discussion that can protect children can be in there, I think that they should both be in there. I do not believe it has to be one or the other, and I hope that we can get to a consensus on this, because if I do not want us to see us fail, because this committee, the new legislature, all the reason why my two friends here and you and Legislator Smith were elected was for change. And let's not go back to where we once were. Let's try to figure this out instead of voting down legislation. I can tell you for the past 4 years when I was on the legislature, for the past 4 years, there was no discussion on anything whatsoever. You just voted it down and you never took it back up again. And actually, the most of the time that it was too hard, you had one push of momentum, and that's what we have now. So let's put in the effort to figure out a consensus to get to a yes on Monday. But I thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move to recommend adoption.
If I may, before
yes,
we move.
I just want to make
duly noted on that. I'd like to take a point of personal privilege, I guess, and convey that this has been a long 7-week process. We have undergone several attempts to derail the process from right, wrong, and different. There have been several distractions about the process. The reality is all three of us, quite frankly, have been working very diligently to perfect this language to get to where we're at. Now, it sounds like we still have some more work to do, which is fine. But the reality is true that this has been a process that has been transparent, that has been engaging, that has been, we've been following up nearly weekly in some discussions with organizations, both local and national. And I know that Legislator Anderson, you and your team have been working very hard on this prior to even our existence in the legislature. I do agree that this is an opportunity to send a clear message about what is right and wrong, to use the words of our students here. And to not only do that in Jackson County, but also set an example for our counties regionally and nationally. I think this movement has the ability to show that hate can be triumphed on, and that children deserve to be protected in these situations. So I too agree that we should get this out of committee and get this onto the legislature as a whole, because any further delay will indefinitely kill this. And so if we, which I think we do all agree that the conversion therapy is detrimental to children, we should get this to the legislature as a whole, and let's mark this up fully and make amendments if necessary as we go through the process to get this done, because that is, I think, all of our goal. We just need to figure out the wording to be perfected. So with that, I will second, I guess, and we shall move directly into a vote. All those in favor indicate by the sign of aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, any abstentions?
Abstain.
All right, it appears ayes have it. The ayes do indeed have it. The legislation will move to the legislature as a whole to be recommended for adoption on Monday at 3 p.m. in the downtown courthouse in Kansas City, Missouri. We invite all of you to join us there. You can do it in person or virtually, and we will take up the resolution at that point. Is there any other business before the committee? All right, seeing none, we are now adjourned at 7:40. Through acclamation.